Hi everyone, welcome to the last video for the sunflower tote. We're going to finish assembling our lining shell and then we're going to do the final assembly for our bag. Now before we start, we're going to need to mark the centers. So fold your zipper panel in half and then mark the centers on the top and the bottom of the longer edge. I should actually have done that on the right side, not the wrong side. Okay. Now you should already have center marks on your inner band pieces from when you cut it. We covered that in video 1. Now we just need to have the top center mark on your lining pieces. So you fold them in half vertically, wrong sides together, and mark the center at the bottom. And then I also want the center on the wrong side along the bottom edge for when we're attaching the gusset. So we'll do that right now. So you're folding them vertically, right sides together, and doing a center mark on the wrong side. Repeat it for this piece. Okay. So now you can take one of your lining pieces and take your zipper panel. And you want to align the center marks and then clip these together. And then you can just quickly baste the zipper panel to the lining panel. So you have them both right side up in this step. Just baste quickly together with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now you'll take one of your inner band pieces and you're going to lay it on top and you're going to align your center marks again. And then this time you're going to sew them together, all of the layers. Now your inner band here should be the wrong side facing up. So your zipper panel and your inner band are right sides together. So sew all of these layers together. Okay, and if you've glued your firm interfacing at the right place, you're not going to be sewing through it here. You're going to be sewing just beneath it. Okay, so all these layers are sewn together. Now, if you're using fabric for your inner band, you'll want to press the inner band towards the top, so away from the zipper panel and the lining, and then you're top stitching with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the bottom edge of the inner band. Okay, so the top stitching is done. Now we're going to repeat exactly the same steps and we're going to attach the other edge of our zipper panel to the remaining lining panel and the remaining inner band. So I'm not going to show all of the steps all over again. You can just repeat exactly what we've just done. And first baste this to the lining panel and then attach the remaining inner band, sew them all together, and then press away from the zipper panel and then top stitch the seam allowance. Okay, once you have the inner band and the lining panel attached to both sides of your zipper panel, you should have something that looks something like this. Now we're going to repeat exactly what we did to attach the gusset to these panels. It's exactly the same method as when you were attaching the gusset to your exterior pieces, with one difference. Now if it helps you to visualize this a little bit better, you can actually open your zipper. Now make sure that you have something here. I've sewn the end of my zipper so I don't lose my pull. So if it helps you to visualize it, you can kind of open up your zipper and pretend that this isn't here. And then you're doing exactly the same thing to attach. So you start by lining up the center marks on the bottom. And then you're going to pin your top corners. Pin or clip, I'm using clips. And then once again you pin or clip everything in between. And then you do the same on this side. Now the only difference here, so it's exactly the same as the exterior. The only difference is that I want you to change your seam allowance when you're sewing these lining panels to your lining gusset. So when you're sewing, you start at one top corner. I'm actually going to pause and I'll finish clipping so that you can see a little bit better what I'm trying to have you change here when you're sewing the gusset to the lining panels. Okay, so I finished clipping the gusset to one of the lining pieces. Now, when you're sewing these together, start with the typical 3/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top corners. And then as you start sewing down the side, I want you to slowly increase your seam allowance to 1/2 inch or even 5/8 of an inch. And follow that larger seam allowance all the way until you get close to the top corner. And then I want you to slowly go back to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance by the time you're sewing this top edge of the corner. And what this will do is it will prevent a baggy lining in your bag. You want the lining to fit nicely inside the exterior shell of the bag. And the reason why you're using 3/8 of an inch here is because you still want the side seams to line up when you're attaching the lining shell to your exterior shell. So you're going to repeat this for both sides. So to attach both sides of your gusset to your 2 different lining panels. So I'm going to sew this one first, and then I'm going to clip this one to the other edge of my gusset, and then I'll trim my seam allowance. Okay, so the lining shell of my bag is complete. This is what it looks like now. And then there's my zipper. So I'm just going to trim the seam allowance. If I can find my scissors. And then I'm going to do the final assembly. So our bag is nearly done. So I'm just trimming my seam allowance on my lining a little bit, just because again, this will prevent it from not fitting nicely inside the exterior shell of our bag. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll finish trimming the seam allowance, and then we'll just complete the final assembly. Okay, so I've trimmed the seam allowance on my lining shell, and I'm going to open my zipper all the way. And then I'm going to, sorry, the bag is quite big, so hopefully you're seeing everything on the video. I'm going to insert the exterior into the lining, and it's really important that you fold down your O-rings and point them down towards the bottom of the bag. So fold these down, pointing down towards the bottom, and then stick your handles in. Do the same on both sides. So now you're going to pin or clip the top edge together. And I always start by pinning or clipping the side seams if there are any. So I'm going to clip these side seams, the 4 side seams first, because I want those to be lined up right. Otherwise, your bag is it's like askew. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it won't look nice. So it's most important to start with that first. And then you can just go ahead and clip the rest of the top edges together. and then sew them together. And then you might want to, once you have the top edges sewn together, you might want to maybe trim away some of the bulk at those 4 side seams. It depends on what your machine is capable of. Mine will be fine. But if you're not sure, you're using a domestic, then I would suggest just cutting away a bit of the bulk at those 4 side seams. Okay, so I have my side seams clipped together. Then I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest and sew them together along the top edge. Now, because you have these curves, take your time sewing the curves so that they're nice and smooth and round. And then turn your bag through the interior zipper pocket. Now make sure before you sew this next step that you did not accidentally close the zipper of your zipper pocket. Make sure that your interior zipper pocket is wide open and that you can reach your hand through the bottom so that you'll be able to turn your bag after you've sewn the top together. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to finish clipping the top edges together, and then I'll go ahead and sew them, and then I'll come back to turn the bag through the zipper pocket. Okay, so the top edge is sewn together, and because we have a lot of curves, you can't just turn your bag now. You need to clip or notch at the curves, or you can trim your seam allowance. I find trimming the seam allowance seems to handle the curves fairly nicely. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll trim my seam allowance, and then we'll turn the bag. Okay, so the top edges are sewn together and I've trimmed my seam allowance. Now I'm just going to reach in through my zipper pocket and pull my bag. Turn it right side out. And then there's only 2 small steps left after this. We just have to top stitch the top edge of our bag and then sew the bottom of our zipper pocket shut. I'm going to try to find my straps and pull them through. Now the hardest part is the bottom because it has that firm sew-in interfacing, and also the inner bands because they have also the firm sew-in interfacing. But I find this bag is relatively easy to turn. If you find it difficult, what you can do is always, it's a pretty easy solution, but it's always to just increase the size of your interior zipper pocket. So this one has a 9-inch opening, so if you find this difficult to turn, you can just increase it to 11 inches. The lining piece is it's wide enough to accommodate a larger zipper pocket. So if you're finding this difficult to turn, that's always a possible solution. And as I say that, it's giving me some trouble. Now, don't worry if everything is a little bit wrinkled, if you're using cork for the inner band like I am. It eventually just straightens itself out. Okay, now reach in through your interior zipper pocket and poke those those curves at the top edge. You can just poke them out that way. And the ones on the other side. Before you top stitch, you can press the top edge flat. Usually if I'm using cork, I can't press it, so what I'll do is I'll roll the seam and I'll just clip the top edge before I top stitch. That way there, it also gives you a chance to inspect it just to make sure that everything lined up nicely and that it all looks good. Okay, so I'm going to do that, what I just mentioned. I'm going to roll the seams and clip it, and then I'll top stitch it. And now you can also, you can close the bottom of your zipper pocket. You can just clip it, and then you can sew it by hand, but I always use my sewing machine because I'm terrible at hand sewing. So I'll just use my machine and I'll sew as close as I can get to the edge, as long as I'm catching both of the folded bottom edges when I'm sewing it shut. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to roll my seams and clip them because I don't want to press near the cork. Okay, and I'll just do that the whole way, clip it, and then top stitch it. Okay, so I've sewn the bottom of the zipper pocket, so I'll just tuck that back in, and I can now close the zipper pocket. And I also finished the top stitching on my bag. So there's one simple thing left to do. Obviously you're going to want to press the exterior of your bag. I'm just going to stuff the bag, make it a little bit easier to work with. I should have done this before, perhaps. Okay, so I'm just going to stuff it a little bit. And then the last thing we need to do is to install the zipper end for my zipper. And now, okay, so by stuffing the bag, I kind of get a good idea of how the zipper is going to sit, and if I need to shorten the end of the zipper at all. I don't like a really long zipper end hanging out the edge of my bag. I like it to be inside the bag, so I find this to be the perfect length. So all you'll need is your metal zipper end and the little screw that came with it. If you're using a fabric zipper end, then you should have installed that earlier. It's a little bit easier to put it on the zipper before you attach it to the zipper panels, or once it's attached to the zipper panels before you install it into the lining. So the zipper is short enough, so all I'm going to do, I look at it from the wrong side of the zipper, and then I kind of fold it up so that I can tuck it into the zipper end. I'm going to try to be careful, make sure I don't lose the little screw that came with it. So I just fold this nicely, and I check to make sure that it fits nicely inside. Sometimes I use, if I can find it, where is my, okay, I'm just going to get my seam ripper. Okay, here we go. So sometimes I find it helpful to just use the seam ripper and kind of tuck the end of the zipper in. Now this is really easy to do if you're using a number 3 zipper, but if you're using a wider zipper like I am, it can sometimes get a little bit more difficult to stick the zipper inside the zipper end. But this seems okay to me. So what I'm going to do before I put it in permanently, I am going to put a little drop of glue. I use this E6000. So I put a little drop inside the zipper end because I don't want my zipper end to come off. And my glue is dry, so try to fix that first. I guess it's helpful if you make sure that your glue hasn't dried on the tip. Okay. Still not coming out. Okay, very stubborn, but I gotta drop out. Okay, so Just gonna fold this very carefully. It has to be the width of the zipper end. It helps. I swear it's not usually this difficult, but it's giving me a hard time today. So I'll stick that in and use this to really make sure it's all the way in. Okay, and then I'm going to use my teeny turner. I love this little screwdriver. It's perfect. The bits are really small and they're perfect for all those little screws for installing all the various pieces of hardware like turn locks and these zipper ends. And this screw is being naughty, so I'm going to get a new screw. But you get the idea. And there's my zipper end. I have a little thread here. Okay, and then that's it. The bag is complete. You just want to press the exterior and you're all done.